All right, let's get started. So I got my tea, I got my notes. I will look to the side from time to time, but hopefully I can edit that out. This shirt is screaming. This shirt is screaming, y'all. This shirt is like, ah! Ah! Shoot. I take this shirt off at the end of the day. You can literally hear it go, ah. All right, let's get started. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, so we are talking about Japanese history. We're talking about the Tosa going back as far back as you want to go, as far back as we can. This is an interesting subject, an interesting discussion, this Step into the Ring series. And quite frankly, I know that a lot of this information has, like, as far as the Japanese history is concerned, a lot of it has been out there for as long as you want to, as far back as you can go. I mean, it's history, right? But has it ever been put into context to tell the tale of this breed? Any breed, really? No, it has not. And when it comes to it, I think that's a big, big shame. When people think of the Tosa, they often look at it, they look at a surface value, they say it's a Mastiff breed, obviously Western influence, and therefore must be a Western dog. That could not be further from the truth. And the purpose of this series is to help people to understand the Japanese Tosa could have been created nowhere else, by no one else, in no other way. Like we if you look at some of these YouTube videos on the breed, you'll find in the comments there's always somebody who's got the idea, this brand new brilliant idea that no one's ever had before, that they can make a better Tosa, that they can make a better supreme fighting dog, that they can make a better a friend of mine, a good dear friend of mine from Canada would call it build a better mousetrap, right? They'll name off all these breeds. We could put Husky in, we can put Borbal in, and Dog de Bordeaux, and all these other breeds that the Japanese didn't have access to because, they were over there off in the boonies, and what they really needed was the real dogs and all this other kind of stuff. Let me tell you that has got to be one of the most blatant displays of a fundamental misunderstanding of this breed that I ever get the chance to come across. And there are quite a few. Different types and different categories of misunderstandings when it comes to this breed. But they all are kind of centered around misunderstanding the people. The more you misunderstand the people, the more you misunderstand the dog. Honestly, I think that goes for any Japanese breed, but we're talking about the Tosa. That's our expertise, and that's where we're going to stay. Okay, we're going to stay in that lane. But when it comes to it, the purpose of this Step into the Ring series, make no mistake, we're not simply stepping into a fighting ring. We're going to Japan. We're meeting the Japanese culture, and we're going to understand what created the ring in the first place. Then we're going to understand how that ring created the dog. Okay? When going through and looking through this series and how I was going to structure things, it was kind of tough to figure out, okay, where do we interject and say, yes, this is history, this is how it ties into the breed. Yes, this is history, this is how it ties into the breed. How do we tie it together instead of just being a history lesson? How do we make it come alive in the dog? And the more that I get into this series, the more I realize that's not something I should have to do. I shouldn't have to make the case for the dog in the culture. It should already be there. It should already speak itself. When Western people showed up to take Tosas with them back to the West, they took the dogs and nothing else. They didn't take the culture. They didn't take the history, the understanding. The creature was even left behind. They took genetic DNA, essentially, but they didn't take the story. And in a sense, they didn't take the breed. If you talk to a Japanese or Korean dogman about what makes a Tosa, I'm going to paraphrase and summarize this quite simply. It's who they are. From the moment that a Western show dog is born, as soon as they can start standing up, if you intend to show them, you're going to start seeing pictures. If you follow some of these breeders, you'll start seeing pictures of them showing a puppy stacking, and they'll have a little treat, a little tiny chain, and the puppy's on the table, and they're showing this puppy doing what is considered a nice pose, which in show circles they'll call a stack. Each breed has a specific way it's supposed to pose, so for that given breed, it's a specific stack. I'm going to really mess that up if I'm not careful. It's specific stack. In Japan and in Korea, it's not really all that different in the sense that they want a puppy that does what essentially and ostensibly is a stack. It's the same thing on the surface. When it comes to it, the Japanese and Korean dogman, they are evaluating their Tosas second by second by second, and in ways that you might not even consider fair here in the West. But regardless, it's what they do. It's what it is. It's how they see the breed. It's how they work with the breed. It's who they are, right? When it comes to the West, so much is done to make sure that the dog has a proper stack. But it's a counterfeit. In Japan and in Korea, of the many criteria that they're looking for, they look for a puppy that stacks naturally. And they're okay with waiting however long they need to wait in order to get it. That's just one of the many criteria. It should not be a puppy you have to teach to stack. It should be a puppy that stacks naturally. And for those of you who've been working with dogs, especially if you worked with multiple breeds, not just multiple big breeds, but multiple breeds, you've seen those dogs. You've seen those puppies. The ones that just naturally show. The ones that just naturally stack. They've never been taught. They've never been taken to a dog show or anything like that. But they just have a natural air about them that is absolutely brilliant. I know you've met those dogs. I can think of a miniature poodle that was like that. His name was Pierre. That dog even did a trot that was just like, I don't understand it. I don't understand it. He was never taught anything about show a day in his life. And yet that dog could shut down any show any day of the week and twice on a Sunday. And when it comes to it, the dogmen in Korea, the dogmen in Japan, they're looking for a dog that has it naturally. They don't want to have to teach that. Why? Why is that? Why does that matter? When we go and we look at the history of this breed, one of the biggest shames about it, and one of the things that we in the West should be so appalled at, is the fact that we created a breed standard over a breed standard that was already there. We created a rubric of testing over a rubric of testing that was already there, and we created a whole new character. A whole new character, which for the Japanese and Korean dogmen means we stopped creating Tosas. We created something else. Something that is down from Tosas. You could call it a Tosa descendant. It's got Tosa in its blood, really made up of Tosa, just bred a different direction as far as they're concerned. And it's sad because the truth is really just sitting there in your face. You got to have eyes to see and ears to hear. And if you don't, you miss the whole thing. Today, we're going to talk about Bushido first. And just before I get into it, I'm going to say one more thing. we're going to continue talking about the history of Japan and the history of the samurai and all that stuff. We're going to get into sumo. We're going to get into so many other things as we go through this series. And then we're going to get to the dogs themselves. It's going to be thorough. But before we move on to the very next part of the history of Japan, it is not going to make, it is not going to make any sense at all whatsoever if you don't understand this part of this video, Bushido, and then what we're going to talk about with Musashi. If you don't understand those two things, the rest of it is just kind of, okay, well, it's a story, and it's not really going to make the most sense. But the better you can understand this, the better and deeper your understanding of the rest will be. The better and deeper you will understand when I say things like this. You ready? You sitting down? Okay, here it goes. The Tosa Inu is not game. Okay? They are not a game dog. They never have been. They never will be. They are not intended to be. Okay? And that is why they will never lose to a game dog. Period. So, that being said, let's talk about Bushido. So again, in our last video, we talked about how warriors and the military men, the fighters back in the day were called warriors in Japan. And the word for warrior is not samurai. Again, samurai means to serve. Bushi is warrior. And I do like the way that we ended our last video talking about in order to have respect, you have to be respectable. It's the perfect segue and transition and blend into what we're talking about right now. Bushido. So, do in this context means the way, or the it could also mean the study of, like as far as how to understand it. It translates into the way, though. So when we say Bushido, we mean the way of the warrior. That's what it translates into. What it means is how to be a warrior. I don't know how to put that. Like I said at the end of the last video, where we were talking about the discipline and the tradition and the pride and honor of the people of Japan, and how just about everything, it seems like, has an apprenticeship where you have to learn about it. I was reading an article earlier today where it's talking about how a 100-year-old man in Japan is not yet retired. This gentleman is a chef, and he makes one thing: sushi. The interesting part about it, right? When asked why he hasn't retired yet, he said, and I'm summarizing here, or paraphrasing here, he said, "I have yet to make my great creation." How would you define that type of passion, that type of commitment, that type of vision? I say it's awesome in one of the most simplest and purest senses of the word, awesome. It is awesome. It is awe-inspiring. It is flooring, flabbergasting. It is discombobulating. It is a 101-year-old gentleman who has yet to retire, because despite doing what he does for the past 4/5 of a century or more, he has yet to create his best work. He is still on his way. That's fascinating. And when it comes to really any of the crafts, any of the jobs, any of the things to do there, really everything is turned into a craft and then therefore turned into an apprenticeship. And it is mesmerizing watching some of these artisans, which they must all be, work their craft. Bushido, the way of the warrior, is no different. Bushido is essentially the virtues and the values that make a warrior a warrior. As we covered in the last video, if you do not have a samurai, if you do not have a daimyo, shogun, if you are not serving anyone, you are a Ronin. That is one of the first definitions. As a samurai, as a bushi, you have a lord. And really, when you think about any other culture in any other part of history, there is no other culture where their military are described as vagabonds. Ronin means water person. Like you go with the flow, you drift around, you're a drifter. Your same words that you would use to describe a homeless person or a jobless person. As a matter of fact, to this day, certain times in Japan, to this day, people will still refer to somebody without a job as a Ronin, as a almost useless sort of person, or a directionless and purposeless sort of person. There's nowhere else in the world where you have a warrior who is trained as a warrior that is no longer a warrior but a vagabond, a societal reject, if they don't have their lord, their leader. There are many disciplines of the samurai: swordsmanship, hand-to-hand combat, taking care of your equipment. There are disciplines upon disciplines upon disciplines when it comes to being a complete samurai. However, if we were to sum up what is the definition of a samurai, right, we would put it in two parts. Part one would be what we covered in our last video. You have a lord, period. You have a superior that you are serving with your soul, essentially. And then part two would be that you adhere to Bushido and that you embody Bushido. So let's go over what that entails. Bushido is a code. It is a warrior's code, and it helps to give guidelines and direction to the ultimate definition of character for what a warrior or bushi should be. We're going to go through these tenets. One thing that should be understood is that Bushido has not been static. It has not been the same throughout history. It has been modified over time in different eras. However, ultimately, the values and principles and the ultimate goal of the samurai, it has only been a refining of exactly how to make that better. So let's go over it. The three that we're going to consider throughout this video are going to be Sengoku Bushido, Edo Bushido, and Meiji Bushido. All right, so to start, multiple Bushido types have existed throughout history. The code varied due to influences such as Zen Buddhism, Shinto, Confucianism, as well as changes in society and on the battlefield. The consistent ideal is martial spirit, including athletic, military skills, and valor, fearlessness towards the enemy in battle, respect for oneself and others, and loyalty to the code and your leader. Bushido is a path that the samurai of each era pursued for their entire existence. Again, if you were a bushi, you were two things. You were under someone and you adhered to Bushido. It was your life. It wasn't just something you did when you clocked in. It wasn't just something you did when you put on your armor. It was your life and your way of life, and that needs to be understood. So, Sengoku Bushido, during the Sengoku period. Now, this is during the period that comes after the Kamakura period. It is the Warring States period, Sengoku Judai. It is the earliest written Bushido that I can find, so that's the one we're going to start with. The tenets of Sengoku Bushido are honor, warfare, weapon mastery, martial arts, and valor in battle. Okay? These are going to be very, very important to consider and remember. We will go into each of these eras Bushidos in greater detail when we get to those eras. But for now, just hear them. Next up is Edo Bushido. Bushido expanded and formalized the earlier code of the samurai written in the Sengoku era and stressed sincerity, frugality, loyalty, mastery of martial arts, and honor to the death. So, the tenets of Edo Bushido: sincerity, do not lie, do not be insincere, and do not be superficial. Responsibility, do not be obsequious. Frugality, do not be greedy, which is an interesting point to put on samurai. It is intended to be a human code. You don't need frugality in battle. Or should I say rather, you don't need to worry about how you spend money in battle. But the understanding here is that people spend money based off of what's on their heart. And if you want to know what people value, look at what they spend their money on. If you want to know what people care about and what they believe, look at where they invest. And it's interesting to see that at this time, they had already figured that out and beat it into the minds of their military men and their warriors. Frugality, do not be greedy. Politeness, do not be rude and do not slander. Modesty, do not be boastful and do not be arrogant. Loyalty, do not be unfaithful. Harmony, be on good terms with comrades. Tranquility, do not be overly concerned with events. Compassion, show concern for one another. Be compassionate with a strong sense of duty. We're going to come back to Edo Bushido in just a bit, but for now, hear those. The Meiji era, Meiji Bushido, had righteousness, heroic courage, benevolence and compassion, respect, honesty, honor, duty and loyalty, self-control, filial piety, wisdom, fraternity, and again, duty. So duty and loyalty is chugi and duty is giri. So these are two different virtues. We'll get into the actual differences of them when we get to the Meiji era. But for now, I'm going to say something, okay? These Bushido code, the code of Bushido, these virtues here, you might notice some things. These are not simply things you might do on a battlefield. These are life values. These are things everybody wants people to learn and everybody wants to be. Kind of like the code of chivalry, everybody wants to think of themselves as noble, right? Same kind of way, Bushido itself, these values are actually pretty awesome and pretty fantastic. When it comes to why this is important, I'm gonna tie this in and hopefully start to begin the process of us understanding the Tosa Inu. Here's the deal. These are not virtues like stabby stab, chop off the head, poke out an eyeball, kick in the nuts or don't kick in the nuts. You know, these aren't fighting rules. These are character traits. These are virtues. I mean, heck, if you read the Bible, half of these almost look like they could qualify for fruit of the Spirit. And it's some pretty good stuff. And the crazy part is this. These would be things that you would think would only be human virtues. Only people can be these things. And honor, like what dog has honor? You're anthropomorphizing. You gotta be anthropomorphizing the dog. Loyalty, but all dogs kind of are loyal. So, I mean, really, is it loyalty? You know, I mean, we can go down the list and keep on looking at it. But when it comes to it, is it not strange that this code is what the Tosa is supposed to be? And if we juxtapose it next to what the FCI and ostensibly the JKC say a Tosa is supposed to be, right? I want to make clear that I have no problem with the show scene. I have no problem with dog shows. I have no problem with any of that. My problem is what is being shown. Okay? My problem is what is being selected as ideal and what is written into the standard as the way things are supposed to be. If we could fix that, I got no problem with it. As a matter of fact, I think it's awesome. We should all try to accomplish it. But until we fix that, we're creating something else and saying that it's what we want it to be. Let's look at what the FCI says the Tosa temperament is supposed to be. The Tosa temperament, sorry, I scrolled too far and went past it. Yeah, I missed it. It's that big. The Tosa temperament, according to the Kennel Clubs, the temperament is marked by patience, composure, boldness, and courage. What do those mean? What do you mean by patience? Like, are they, I would say a patient dog doesn't fight. I would say a patient dog doesn't try to lord anything over anybody, never tries to get in trouble. As a matter of fact, they are the long-suffering patient type. Patience. Composure. I guess they're dignified and they never really get goofy and play and stuff like that because they're composed. Maybe they're never caught off guard. Maybe that's it. Boldness. They're always bold. Always, always bold. I guess that means that they are like always out front, always presenting themselves and proving themselves. I don't know what that actually means. And like, if a judge says, if the standard says the dogs are supposed to be at least 24 inches at the shoulder, a judge can pull out a ruler, stick it next to the dog and say, that dog is 24 inches at the shoulder. He passes. Boldness? Bold. Like, what does that actually mean? And it's not to say that, the Bushido doesn't have its own words that need to be defined, but I'm saying Bushido defines them. This standard, boldness and courage. What is the courage? What is the courage? And how do you test that in a show ring? What are you looking for to test their courageousness in a show ring? How do you test that? What are you doing exactly? Because hold that thought. We're going to scroll down to the bottom of this standard. Disqualifying faults. Aggressive or overly shy. I think you've distracted from what the point of the breed is supposed to be. For starters, how are you going to test courageousness if you don't want aggression. And I'm not saying unbridled aggression is good or anything like that. I'm just saying, look at your own words. You contradict yourself. How do you know if the dog is courageous? How are you testing that? What means do you have to test that? What titles does the dog have to have prior to coming into the show ring to show this dog has courage? What value are you placing on temperament when we know that the Japanese dogmen and the Korean dogmen define a Tosa as a character first? That is first and foremost character. After all, have we not got Bushido? So then, in what way are you testing temperament in the ring? I'll tell you. You grab the dog by its nuts, you open up its jaws, and if it snaps at you, then it's not got a good temperament. If it's a little uncertain about what you're doing with its nuts, that's not a good temperament. Is that what defined a Tosa? Is that what has defined a Tosa for the past 1,000 years? Is that what makes a better Tosa? Is that what a Tosa is? Now, I'm not saying anybody should want a shy dog. I'm not saying anybody should want a reactive dog. But I am saying, again, you came in and you tried to fix a solution fix a problem rather that didn't have a problem in the first. It wasn't a problem in the first place. Not in that way. I mean, to look at the situation the Tosa is in, no, dogfighting is not legal worldwide. And there's got to be a better way to create a proper Tosa than simply engaging in illegal activity. Right? But instead of actually creating something that could create a Tosa, with some point within the last 100 years, no. Instead, we moved the goalposts entirely. We redefined what it is to be a Tosa around a look. And a look that, again, the Japanese and the Koreans do better because they're selecting the look from birth. Whereas here in the West, we train it. And again, I got nothing against Western people. There are some awesome people in this breed and other breeds as well. I'm not trying to put people down, especially not any individuals. But what I am trying to do is attack these ideas. Does it really make sense? I mean, think about it. Think about it. Why did we have to write the temperament section of the standard? Why did we have to write that? I mean, you rushed to put together a standard in the first place. Why did you have to write the temperament section? It's been there. It's been there. If you know the first thing about this breed, you know Bushido. It's as simple as that. Why did you write a temperament section? Because you're trying to fix a problem that didn't exist, at least not for the dogs. You're trying to make them be something else. You're trying to fit them into a different box, a Western box. That's what the problem is. You could have just plagiarized any of these lists. You feel like the weapons mastery and martial arts and valor in battle is kind of touching too much into the warrior stuff, and maybe you might make people think too much about dogfighting. Fine, I'm with you. Okay, you have options here. I see Meiji Bushido. Righteousness, heroic courage, benevolence, and compassion. That one's always great, right? Respect, honesty, honor, duty and loyalty, self-control, filial piety, wisdom, fraternity, and duty. Why do you need to write anything else? Why? And of all the things to choose, why those? Why those? I have a question for you. With your great and miraculous behavior / temperament section of the standard, patience, composure, boldness, and courage. How does anybody know if they're looking at a Tosa? When it comes to working dogs, can you find me one that these 4 words don't describe? One that these 4 words don't describe: patience, composure, boldness, and courage. One working breed, especially when it comes to any sort of bite work, be it hunting or people, doesn't matter. One working breed. One. Can you name me one? One that those 4 words do not describe the ideal of. I'll wait. There's no such thing. So when you had a perfect description of what the Tosa temperament should be, you had something that made perfect sense and was already written, the work was already done, and you contrived something that was 100% bull, and That's what it makes you so much better. You're so much better because you breed according to the standard. Is that what makes you better than the Japanese and the Korean dogmen? Is that what makes us better than the Japanese and Korean dogmen because we breed according to the standard that says that, when that's never been what defined a Tosa, and it can't even define a Tosa as far as differentiating it from a German Shepherd, because patience, composure, boldness, and courage are things I would use to describe a German Shepherd, are things I would use to describe any mastiff breed, a livestock guardian breed. Any breed is patient, composure, boldness, and courage. That is what they all are. Especially when it comes to working dogs. They kind of have to be those things at minimum. And you didn't even write anything extra. Anything extra. Nothing. I mean, you could have given something. And you didn't. And then on top of that, you completely ignored what has been there for the last 1,000 years. It is mind-numbing. How do we do that? How do we do that? Honestly. Let's go back to Bushido. We're going to look at Edo Bushido. Sincerity. Do not lie. Do not be insincere. Do not be superficial. The ideal Tosa, the proper Tosa, is a dog that you can look at in the eyes and you see a soul. You do not see a machine. You do not see an animal. You do not see any of that. You see a being. And it looks back at you with clarity, with soul, with passion, with so many things. It doesn't matter if you're their owner or if you're a stranger or if you're an assailant. It doesn't matter. When you look at that creature, you're going to see a soul. Now, what that soul's going to do to you depends on which one of those things you are, granted. But still, you see a being, a sentient being. There is a genuineness there and a sincerity there that, regardless as to what the Tosa is doing, there is no two-face. There is no avarice, no dual-minded, no multiple purposes. They are simply what they are. Responsibility, do not be obsequious. Frugality, do not be greedy. Politeness, do not be rude, do not slander. The Tosa is not intended to be a reactive dog. They are not intended to fight every dog that they see. As a matter of fact, they get along with more dogs than they don't. Politeness is a virtue and a way to interact with society, a way to be as a human being for the people. Modesty, do not be boastful, do not be arrogant. Loyalty, do not be unfaithful, and we talked about that in the last video. Harmony, be on good terms with comrades. Again, Tosas are perfectly fine with dogs they have been raised with. They are perfectly fine with animals of their household. They are tranquility embodied in the form of an animal. They are at peace. You can forget that you have that dog inside the house. You can forget that the dog exists because they are so calm and peaceful and tranquil. They are peaceful inside, and that's what makes them peaceful outside. Right? They are at peace inside, and that's what makes them tranquil outside. And that is definitely a thing to be remembered. Tosas should not have any of the marks of instability that come with Western dogs. They absolutely should not. They should feel like you're watching a kung fu movie where they have their obligatory scene in the tea garden and they're walking around with their hands folded behind their back as they discuss the merits of kung fu and martial arts and the virtues of whatever ism that they are speaking about, right? The dog is at peace on the inside. Tranquility, do not be overly concerned with events. Compassion, show concern for one another. Be compassionate with a strong sense of duty. Again, when it comes to things you think of when you think of a warrior, compassion is not something that you think of. Let's be honest. But when you think about the ideal member of your military, compassion is in there. You want to see that they have a good heart. You want to see that they have the courage to express that good heart and that they're capable of it. It's important. You can't have people who are powerful without compassion. You cannot have strength without compassion, or you have tyranny. and lawlessness and violence and vice takes over. But if you have strength with compassion, if you go back to that first video in this series and you look at how, excuse me, the second video in this series, and you look at how that titled and ranked male Tosa, who would go on, continue on his way to become one of the strongest dogs in this country, how he dealt with that female, how he was able to resolve that situation without a mark on either of them. No blood, no none of that. He used his strength to make peace. The sword that heals, if you will. When it comes to what the Tosa is expected to be, one thing I will say until I'm blue in the face, one thing I will tell people again and again and again, and I really don't care how it makes me look in your eyes, because I'm not trying to impress you or impress your eyes. I'm telling you the truth. You can do with that as you like. I don't care if it makes me look silly to you. But, and I've just had people say that. Tosas are not dog aggressive. They're not. They're not intended to be. They're not supposed to be reactive to every dog they see. They're not supposed to be a brawler looking for a fight every time you look up. Nobody wants their military people to be like that. How much confidence would you have in a Navy SEAL if every time you look up, he's in a bar fight? Every time you look up, he's in a fight with somebody who looked at him the wrong way, who took too long to give him his change at the register, and he's fighting everybody he sees. It could be an old lady on the street who's taking too long to get out of his way. It could be a woman. It could be a child. It could be anything. Half of these breeds that you say are real good fighting dogs can't even be bred without a muzzle and a chain, and somebody there to keep them to where they can't get at each other. Tosas are not like that. They're not intended to be like that. The Tosa's warrior spirit comes from an inner balance. So one thing that you should know is that Tosas are not dog aggressive. They are not dog reactive. They are not intended to be. They are dog competitive. And the difference between that is like night and day in the experience of the person who has owned a proper Tosa. You can go your whole life without ever seeing a Tosa fight. Now, they might have dogs that try to fight them, and a Tosa will absolutely just let you, they'll parry. One of the first breeds I ever saw to do this, they will parry. They will let you bounce off of them. They'll deflect. They know exactly how to be not in the way. They know exactly how to make you miss time and time again. And you'll be like up on their side or go crazy and stuff like that. And again, when you look at it, it sounds like atrocious. It sounds like a battle to the death is going on. But when you look at it, they're not actually doing anything to the Tosa. They can't even get a bite in because they can't get them. They're just constantly bouncing off the side of the animal. And he's going to let you wear yourself out. He's going to look at you like, okay, if you're done, I'm going to get back to doing what I'm supposed to be doing over here. You know, when it comes to what makes a proper Tosa, when it comes to what defines a proper Tosa, there are lots of tenets of Bushido, but I'd say that there are some that are more central than others. When you think about these fights between the samurai, you have to understand that they're fighting with a clear head, with open eyes. They're not just blindly swiping around and all this other kind of stuff and stabby, stab. They understand the importance of a balanced and clear mind. They understand the importance of a balanced and clear and unburdened soul, because it helps to make you a clearer, more consistent and more strategical fighter. So they're not the type to give into vice, to give into, oh, just close your eyes and swing. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. And when you look at sumo wrestling, for instance, sumo wrestling has 82 different ways to defeat someone. Or I don't know if it's 82. I got to go back and look at my notes, but it's over 80 ways to defeat someone. And each one of the moves that you can make to defeat someone has a name. Did you push them out of the ring? Did you slap them? Did you take their arm, twist it this way, or did you take their arm and twist it that way? Were you standing on their side, behind them? Were you standing in front of them and deadlifted them? Like, did you pick them up and carry them out of the ring? Did you pick them up over your head and carry them out of the ring? Like, there is a name for each and every style or each and every move you can make. There's a name for it. And again, it is structured, it is clear, it is balanced. That is part of one of the most important and central parts to the Japanese fighter, be they a bushi warrior, be they a sumo, be they a MMA fighter, doesn't matter who they are. One thing that is going to be drilled into their head is the importance of a clean, clear, balanced mind and soul. When it comes to the Tosa, there should be an unspeakable peace, an unspeakable stillness and calmness. Like, if you've ever been on a boat on a lake in the early morning before the wind starts, if you've ever been on any body of water before the wind starts making the ripples, where it's just like you're gliding over glass and looking over just pure glass, you could almost feel like you could almost walk on it. That's what the internal of a Tosa should be, because that's what the internal of a warrior should be. I'm going to make this last bit important to tie this all up, and then we're going to move on to the next part of the series where we talk about Musashi. Again, these are virtues. These are important things that you would want a human to have. These are not just things that you want a dog to have. Most people wouldn't believe that a dog could have them. Here's the interesting part. There are analogies to this code worldwide throughout the annals of history. One of which, one well-known one, is the chivalry code over in Europe and in England, right? The code of chivalry. But when it comes to it, the English Mastiff was around at the time of the Knights and the Knights of the Round Table and all that fun stuff. Some of them, many of them actually, had dogs, Mastiffs, that they raised and they fought alongside them. That being said, as much as dogs have influenced humanity, as much as the relationship has been so close, there is no such thing in the history of the code of chivalry as a time when a knight was set and told, or even decided of their own will and volition, to go watch an English Mastiff to learn chivalry. Now, there are a lot of breeds that have fought throughout the years, and I'm sure there are, ostensibly quite a few people who went to watch a dog fight, maybe to learn how how dogs fight, maybe to learn some things about themselves as a fighter, and I don't know. I assume there's got to be, if nothing else, people at least imagine themselves to be like the dogs themselves. But has there ever been a time where it was a national policy to go and watch a dog to learn how to be a proper human being? And of all the people to have go watch the dog, it's not the nurses, it's not the teachers, it's your military. And this is not, understand, this is not something that's just like, oh, it's way, way back in the days of the samurai. As we'll discover, later on in this series, kind of putting this out there. In World War I and World War II, Tosas were taken to the front lines, and exhibition fights were put on to help, again, the soldiers to not just be entertained but to learn Bushido. What are those virtues? Are they fight, stabby stab, and this, that, and the other? No. The virtues are how to be a better human being, and that's what makes you a better warrior. Not how quick you can stab, how much you can swing, and how crazy you can go, and how long you can fight, and all this. No. Clarity here. Clarity here. Weightlessness here. Weightlessness here. Focus here. That is what makes you a better warrior. The fascinating thing is, I'm saying that Bushido is the way the breed standard it should be written. It should be written, especially when it comes to the character. Just take Bushido's tenets and put them in that section. Just copy, paste. That's all you got to do. You don't have to think about it or anything. You want to keep the Japanese kanji and stuff, make it look official? Go for it. Plagiarize. Do what you got to do, boo. Put it over there. That's all you had to do. And you might say, hey, Corey, that's all well and cool and all, but isn't that kind of just you idealizing the dogs and trying to make them into people, anthropomorphology? And yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Is that really the way the dogs were supposed to be? And I'm going to say yes. And how do we know that? How do we prove that? How do we demonstrate that? Because the samurai, who were defined by living according to Bushido, were instructed to watch the dogs to learn Bushido. There comes a time in the samurai's training where their instructor, their teacher, their master says, I have reached the extent of what I can teach you. The rest will be taught to you by a dog. Bushido. Taught by a dog. Now, could this dog be a whole bunch of other stuff and then just put on a Bushido suit and come in and teach Bushido in a classroom with a little pointer laser light? All right, samurai, this is frugality. No. The dog had to live it in order to show it. It had to live it and breathe it a day in and day out all the time in order for it to be shown. In order for the samurai to come and learn anything from this animal, the dog had to embody Bushido. So we know the Tosa was raised to be the canine embodiment of Bushido. The Tosa in Japan, in Korea, the Tosa that is there, like, should be protected as a national monument because it is the last remaining samurai on the planet, still maintained in its pristine form if you get out of the way and let them be Bushido. To this day it continues. Now, again, I'm not advocating dog fighting, but I am advocating fighting dogs. I am advocating that there are other ways we can create those virtues, and we can test them, and we can demonstrate them, we can cultivate them. We can absolutely do that. But you got to step into the ring for that. So, when it comes to the question that we often get, what is a Pride Rock Tosa like? What is a Tosa like? How do they behave? How are they around other things? How are they around other people? How are they around other dogs and other animals? How are they around strangers? How are they around kids? How are they around this? How are they around that? How, this, that, how they behave and all that stuff. Learn Bushido. And I mean really learn it. I mean study it. I mean get to know it. Get to know it intimately. And the better you know it, the better you know the Tosa. When somebody comes to me and say they know Tosas and they had a Tosa and their Tosa was a mindless, disciplineless nutcase that would eat everything it saw, that's not Tosa, okay? Just because they can fight and they are serious doesn't make them authentic. And just because somebody else's dog is more self-controlled and disciplined doesn't make them watered down. They've got the real deal, boo-boo. You don't. You got a liability. And bragging about it and saying that that's what makes it tough is absolutely antithetical to what the dog is supposed to be. Samurai is not just somebody who walks around with a sword and stabs people. Samurai is character. If you do not have Bushido, you are not a samurai. Doesn't matter if you have a daimyo at that point. If you do not subscribe to Bushido and live it day in and day out, you are not a samurai. Bushido, the warrior way. If you are not in the way, you are not of the warrior. Simple as that. When it comes to what a Pride Rock dog is, expect it to be temperament-wise. We're going to take Bushido and we're going to put it right there. That's the standard we hold ourselves to. Now that it's out there, now that you know, feel free. When you evaluated a Pride Rock dog and want to know what quality it is, when you evaluate another dog that you get and want to know what quality it is and how good it is and stuff, don't take my word for it. Look at Bushido, understand it, and then evaluate the dogs that we produce based off of that. That is a Tosa. You shouldn't have to ask me anymore. You want to know what Bushido is, or you want to know what a Tosa is? Study Bushido. All right. We are going to call it on this video. We're going to move on to Musashi next. If you don't know who that is, you're in for a ride. So for now, thank you guys so very, very much. I hope y'all are having a great day. I hope you have a great weekend, and we will see you next time when we step into the ring. Bye-bye for now. Thank you guys so very much for checking out our channel, for watching our videos. I hope I wasn't too boring. Thank you for following us or watching us. If you do not already follow us, please follow. If you have not liked this video, please like, and please subscribe, and you'll be able to keep up with the next videos we put out about Tosas. We love what we do here. There'll definitely be more videos, and you can learn a bit more about the breed, learn a bit more about us, and hopefully it'll be stuff that you'll find useful. One other thing I would say is that if you can, please share our information. I know a lot of people will say share, but for us it's actually more important. You may not know this, but the Tosa is what we might consider an endangered species here in the US and even in the West. I would say the place that the place that the Tosa is right now is not unlike the place where the pit bull was in the mid-50s throughout the 70s, in that they no longer are used for their original purpose here in the US. Thank God they are not used for their original purpose, so that kind of leaves a vacuum. The breed's notoriety is going down in that vacuum, but what that opens the door for is for bad actors to get a hold of what remaining specimens there are and use them for, we'll say, nefarious purposes. And when it comes to it, this is a wonderful breed. We just barely got the pit bull to where it's like 50-50 publicity, right? I'd hate for the Tosa to be the next dog everybody hates. So please share as much as you can. Get the information out there about the breed. It took so long for the pit bull to make a comeback, not because of breeding and responsible breeding practice. No, there's always been people that have been breeding pit bulls responsibly. You know, what it took was having people in their corner, advocates, people who could stand up and say, that's not the way pit bulls act in reality. That's a dog that's been abused. That's a dog that's been mistreated. That's a dog that's been mistrained. And that can happen to any breed, you know? And the more that those people get out there, the more you see the pit bull coming out in a better light, you know? Unfortunately, it's still got a long way to go, but that was the change. And the same thing is true for the Tosa. We need people who are going to get out there and say, hey, look, that behavior right there, that's not a Tosa. This, that, the other thing, that's not Tosa behavior. This is an example of an unfortunate set of circumstances that befell an individual dog. It is not what is to be expected of the breed as a whole. So when it comes to it, I think it's super important that you share, even more than liking and subscribing, which would be awesome. But share so that the information gets out there and more people learn the truth about the Tosa. All of it, not just the fighting past, but where they are today and where they're heading. Hopefully, more people will see this, more people will share, and the information will be out there. Again, you don't necessarily have to want to get a Tosa yourself, but learn about the breed. We need more advocates. Hopefully, some people watching this will find that true and become an advocate for this wonderful, amazing breed. Thank you guys so much for your time. We'll let you go and enjoy your life and let Mr. Dante get on to his kibble for the day.